Welcome to episode number 62 of the Fitness Hippie Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Mark Torres. And in today's episode, should you eat like the Incredible Hulk? Let's find out. Before Eric Bana and before Edward Norton, before Mark Ruffalo, the Incredible Hulk was played by none other than Lou Ferrigno. If you've never seen the Pumping Iron bodybuilding documentary / movie, you might not know Lou Ferrigno from anything else aside from the Incredible Hulk, but Pumping Iron showed that Lou Ferrigno was a bodybuilder, successful bodybuilder at that. And in that movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger pretty much punks Lou Ferrigno the entire time, plays mind games with him. To this day, we don't know how much of Pumping Iron was true, how much of it was staged. So that could have just all been for show. But Lou Ferrigno was a very successful bodybuilder, and he was in I Love You Man. I just watched I Love You Man yesterday for the very first time.
Oh, you don't know me, but I believe you know my friend Peter Clavin, who has an exclusive listing on this man's property. Lou, you promised Peter the commission to your house.
I know, but he's not doing shit with
That
it.
is total crap, Hulk, all right? Listen, this kind of stuff doesn't happen overnight.
Peter, who the hell is this guy?
Hulk, let me tell you something about Peter
Look,
Clavin.
please get your hand out of my face and stop calling me Hulk. I'm a person, okay?
I'm a person, okay?
I warned you.
Oh, you warned me?
Hello?
I'm on my way to the marriage bureau.
Fuck you, Lou Ferrigno!
Is that Sydney?
Hey! Fuck you, Hulk! Oh, shit. Ow! What are you doing?
What's going on?
Sydney's fighting Lou Ferrigno.
Relax, you're so strong.
Easy.
The Hulk has me in the sleeper hold, and I don't think I can take him out.
That's it.
Wow.
Shockingly enough. So he was in that as well, and always will be forever known as the Incredible Hulk, the OG Incredible Hulk. No CGI there. Like, that's Lou Ferrigno's body. And just a few hours ago, 19 hours ago, as of the recording of this video, so by the time you record it, it's a few days old, Men's Health released a video called Everything the Hulk Eats in a Day, and this is part of their Eat Like a Celebrity series. I did watch this yesterday for the first time, so I'm going to watch it again right now. So it's still going to be a pretty fresh reaction, but yeah, let's kind of get into it, see if you should eat like the Incredible Hulk eats.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lou Ferrigno. I live by my motto, health is your greatest wealth. So you're looking at a man right now, 69 years old, and nobody looks like this because I spent 55 years exercising and be the best I can be. I think I know what I'm talking about. When I was a kid, I was very young. I lost a major part of my hearing because I had an ear infection. So I had a severe speech impediment. So as a kid, I was very obsessed with power because I was bullied a lot. I do a lot of comic books like The Incredible Hulk, Superman comics. And then I realized I discovered bodybuilding because that gave me a wonderful sense of well-being. I came to the conclusion to be best of friends with my body, to be the best I can be because I want to have power. And then eventually in 1977, I did the Incredible Hulk TV series, which became a huge bonfire hit all over the world. But the beauty about the Incredible Hulk, I was the only comic character to show my physique with no costumes. Spider-Man, Superman, Iron Man, they all have costumes. But for me, I had to prove myself to look like the Hulk when I did the series. So that transcended all over the world because everybody, when they see the Hulk, they see me in person, they get motivated because of my physicality, kept the same passion for the last 55 years since I was a kid. It's all about having a balanced diet. I'm gonna go through with you what I eat step by step during the day.
All right, so there's your little introduction into who Lou Ferrigno is. At the beginning there, he says that he is 69 years old and has been working out for 55 years, and he looks like that, so he must know what he's talking about. We'll see what happens. And then he goes into how he got to be the Hulk, which is pretty cool because he had this the speech impediment from, I think he said he lost his hearing, and then he decided to go into bodybuilding. And from there, he got a lot of inspiration from the Hulk to get into that spot, and then eventually became the Hulk itself. So that's a pretty cool story. Let's see what Lou Ferrigno eats for breakfast.
When you eat healthy, you have to take some work. When the body wakes up, you want to have a good breakfast, because if you don't eat breakfast, you're going to end up eating more food later on in the day. My breakfast will consist of egg whites, 3 eggs, maybe 4 eggs, a banana, and maybe like a yogurt. Yolk is okay for the body, but egg whites, especially if you want to just attain less fat in your body, egg whites can't hurt. So usually when I have an omelet, I usually say I like to have a 3 egg white omelet, but mix 1 yolk to give it a taste like a regular omelet. That's my personal preference. So most importantly of all, I drink a lot of water. I usually drink about maybe a glass or 2 per meal, probably half a gallon of water a day. You wake up in the morning, have a glass of water as soon as you wake up. That is so important, especially with the digestive system.
All right, so there he talks about his breakfast. I think the first thing that he says there is like the most important thing that you can do is eat breakfast when you wake up during the day, because it sets your body for the rest of the day. If you don't eat breakfast, you'll end up eating more food throughout the day. And I don't know that that's true or not, because when we talk about the totality of things, I talk about this a lot. What you do in a specific moment doesn't have as profound of an impact as the whole picture. I guess it's kind of the best way to describe it. So if you don't eat breakfast and the rest of your day, you don't overeat it, you don't overdo it, then there's nothing wrong with not eating breakfast. I'm not suggesting that you should or shouldn't eat breakfast. That's completely and totally up to you. So, I mean, for somebody to say that you absolutely should eat breakfast, that's kind of what is breakfast for you? Somebody who works a graveyard shift, they might not have a traditional breakfast. Their breakfast might be at a weird time compared to yours. So there's no tried or true reasoning here. Like, I kind of understand what he's saying, but the fact that like if you eat breakfast, you won't eat more throughout the day is totally not true. You can absolutely eat breakfast and still overeat throughout the day. So that's kind of a, I don't know, that's a very vague kind of thing to say there. But his breakfast is good. 3 egg whites. He does like an egg white omelet with 1 yolk on top of it. He talks about yolks, the egg whites not wrecking your cholesterol and wrecking your arteries. And I think that that's something that has more or less not been debunked, but like it's kind of a pointless thing to say. Like, at some point in time, people were scared of eggs because of the possible effect that they had on cholesterol. And I think in the grand scheme of things, of all the foods that could negatively affect your cholesterol, eggs is like one of the ones to not worry about that much. Unless you're like eating an exorbitant amount of eggs, I might have just made that word up, you're probably not going to run into any cholesterol situations if you're not overdoing it. So I think for you to be scared of the yellow parts of the eggs, the yolk of the eggs, is kind of neither here or there. It's not something that you should worry too much about, that you should put too much stock in. If you want to eat the yellow part of the eggs, like the whole egg, not just the egg white, but the whole part of the egg, I think by all means go for it. If you want to eat egg whites because you enjoy the egg whites, by all means go for that too. And I think his little tip there is actually not a bad tip at all. Like, if you want to have more egg whites in your diet, because they're lower calorie or less fat or whatever your reasoning is. If you don't particularly like egg whites that much, if you put an egg yolk on top of it, it kind of makes it seem like a regular flavor despite being majority egg whites, which I think is a great kind of tip that he put there. If that's something that you're struggling with your breakfast and stuff like that. And then I think he says he has a banana, great, have some fruit, and then yogurt, great. I think that's a great, well-balanced breakfast. Whether or not that's something that you would enjoy to do, totally up to you. Totally depends on the things that you like to eat. But I think there's some good tips there. But the whole breakfast thing, totally up to you if you want to eat breakfast or not eat breakfast.
After my breakfast, I wait like an hour, and then I weight train. You don't want to work out 2 minutes after you finish eating. You want to train, I would say, maybe an hour before you eat. I usually train, I would say 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning. I train body parts like twice a week. In the afternoon, I do cardio, because right now for me, it's just about maintaining what I have.
All right, so there he says you shouldn't work out 2 minutes after eating, which I totally agree with. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but you just feel like shit. Like I think I talked about recently in the cardio episode, like there were times where I would try to eat breakfast and then go for a run immediately, and it just doesn't work. Like, you have all those contents in your stomach and it feels terrible. So you'll probably go to the gym and it'll definitely affect your workout, because you're just going to have all that food just sitting there and you're trying to work out. But then he goes and says, like, you should work out an hour before eating. So I don't know if he's suggesting fasted exercise. I'm not sure. That's just something he kind of threw in there. I don't think it matters. I don't think that it matters. I know that it doesn't matter when you work out, as long as you're working out, as long as you're picking a schedule that works for you and you're sticking to it, whether it be 1 hour before eating, whether it be an hour after eating, whether it be 3 hours before eating, no matter when it is, as long as you're working out, as long as you have a workout schedule and you're adhering to that workout schedule, then you're on the right track. And he talks about hitting most muscle groups twice a week. I think that's a perfect amount for people to hit, or to try to strive to hit for.
Lunch, I would have maybe a sliced turkey, maybe I have like a half a piece of chicken. I would say probably maybe about 8 ounces of protein. I make sure that every meal I have a carbohydrate, some form of fat, and protein. The most important thing is to eat protein every time you eat, because protein feeds the muscle and you want to starve the fat. And then I would have a piece of fruit like a banana, maybe strawberries, and maybe like broccoli, some vegetables. And I make sure that I space my meals. I eat 3 or 4 times a day. But here's the trick. We all have a tendency to grab ice cream. We have a tendency to grab this, fattening stuff. By the time you have dinner, your body feels like it's full. The trick is you want to stay hungry. You want to leave the table knowing that you could have eaten more, but you satisfy yourself.
All right, so there for lunch, he says he has some turkey, or maybe I think he said half a piece of chicken, about 8 ounces of protein, then with a fruit and a vegetable. Like I said, these are all good tips. He says you should try to eat protein with every single meal. I think that's a great tip. If you can try to start to implement that into your life, that's going to help a lot. It's going to help a lot in terms of making better food decisions, because if you eat a piece of protein for every meal, that's going to take up space that you might have used for something else. So I think that's a great tip. And then he talks about, I kind of got lost in his statement there. He talks about our ability to want to go for something like ice cream or something fattening. But then he says if you can leave the table feeling like you didn't overstuff yourself and feeling like you got a little bit left in the tank for dinner, then that's a good place to be. So I think, I guess what he's trying to say is if you can stop yourself from having that little extra bit that's going to take you over the edge, then you have space in your kind of diet, in your stomach, for dinner time, which I think I understand that. I think I understood that correctly. And I think that's something that a lot of people run into. Even myself, I will eat myself to the point of feeling absolutely stuffed, which is not something that you should strive to do, because once you get to that point, you've probably eaten more than what your body would have necessarily needed to feel full at that point. I talk about, slowing down when you eat. Your body takes up to 20 minutes to send the signal that you're full. So if you eat really quickly and then you eat within that or less than that 20-minute window, you might have surpassed the point of fullness and now you're way overstuffed. So I think that's what he was trying to say there. If you can hold off on having that ice cream, that would put you over the edge for your lunchtime. Then you can go into dinner with a clean slate going forward. So I think that kind of makes sense, but that's going to be totally dependent on yourself as a person. So he says 8 ounces of protein, fruits and veggies for lunch. That's not a bad tip at all.
Dinner, I would have my favorite thing for dinner. I would love to have fish, maki-maki, tilapia, salmon. I have a nice baked potato. Of course, vegetables like string beans, broccoli, spinach, stuff like that. Anytime I eat, I always make sure that when I have vegetables, I always have measure the size of my fish. That'd be a good measure to measure vegetables. Everybody has the tendency when they have dinner, they take bread and they dunk in olive oil and balsamic vinegar.
Is that a thing that people do? Bread and olive oil and balsamic vinegar? I've never seen that in my entire life. Maybe it is something that people do. I have no idea.
After 2 slices of bread, you're talking about 1,500 calories or more. Then have a margarita and then have dinner on top of it. You're going to be fat. And then before bed, maybe I have something very light, because most people have a tendency not to eat all day. They would just eat one large meal in the evening, and then they go to sleep, they wake up, they wonder why they gain weight. So it's important to space your meals out. And that's the way it's been for me for the last 55 years.
All right, so I might have to rewind that, but he says he eats fish for the most part for dinner, and then he has vegetables. He uses his fist to size out the vegetables as he wants to eat, and then he talks about avoiding carbs. He said that the bread with olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Like I said, I've never seen that before. Maybe people do eat that, but he says that if you have 2 slices of bread that's 1,500 calories or more, probably not that much. Even Men's Health, which is they say kind of weird things in their little snippets at the bottom. They're like, maybe it's not that much. Maybe it's like 200 calories for I think they said like a serving size of balsamic vinegar or whatever it was. They were like, slow your roll, Lou. That's a little extreme. But he says like you have like 2 slices of bread and then a margarita and then you have dinner on top of it and you can kind of get into trouble, which I think there's a sense of reasoning in there. I see why he's saying that. So I think for him, like his meal that he goes with is very standard. Once again, not a bad thing. Like he has a piece of fish, whatever his fish is. He says a bunch of fish there. I'm not a seafood guy, so I'm the last person to ask about that. With some vegetables. I think that's pretty much what he says. And then he talks about like if you can avoid the carbs. And then he talks about meal spacing here. Hold on, if I can find it a second here. There it is. Okay, so right before he goes to bed, he says he has something really light to try to avoid to be one of those people who has nothing to eat all day and then they have one big meal. So I don't know what he's trying to get at there is like if you have the one big meal, he says, now you wonder why you gain weight. And I think that depending on how big that meal is, that will dictate whether or not you gain weight or not because, as always, calories are the main driver of weight change. So if your calorie goal for the day is 2,000 calories, if you have one meal and that meal is 2,000 calories or less, you're still going to make progress. Why you would do the one meal, I'm not sure. But, if that meal is obviously over 2,000 calories, then yeah, you'll gain weight. But if it's under 2,000 calories or at 2,000 calories, you're still going to make progress. So it doesn't really have too much to do with like meal spacing. I think a lot of people talk about there's this big debate, and this is something that's been around for a long time, something that I learned in school as well, is like this whole thing about spacing out your meals and having small meals over the course of the day to kind of stimulate your metabolism, to keep your metabolism going versus eating one big meal a day. I think there is a little bit of truth in that. I think if you have these smaller meals throughout the day, your metabolism does go up. But ultimately, it's probably not as much as you would think. It has a little bit of an effect, but if you're still eating those 6 smaller meals, even if your metabolism is going up, let's say, even if it's by a significant amount, which is it's definitely not by a significant amount, if you're still eating over the calories that you need to eat for that day, it's not going to matter because you're still going to go in the opposite direction than maybe you want to go in. So I think the spacing of your meals, not as important. The amount of calories that you consume is the most important thing. Whether or not you do it without breakfast, whether or not you do it with one meal a day, whether or not you space out your meals, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the circumstances that get you to that point, as long as the point is you're hitting your daily calorie goals. So he talks about supplements next.
I think whey protein is a good protein supplement. I don't believe taking any more than 1 or 2 supplement drinks a day because you want to eat your food and not replace your meals with supplement. Supplement is a supplement. It's not a replacement. The more natural you can eat, the better it will be for your health. It's all about natural food and stay away from processed food. I just want to say thanks to Men's Health. Remember one thing, health is your greatest wealth. Everything else is secondary. Without your health, you have nothing.
Nice. Lou Ferrigno. There at the end, he talks about supplements. He talks about whey protein, and he says you shouldn't strive to have more than 1 or 2 whey protein shakes a day because it's taking away from the real food that you can and should be eating. He said the more natural foods that you can eat, as opposed to just supplementation drinks, the better you'll be. And then at the end, he throws in, if you can stay away from processed foods as much as possible, then you're going to be on the right track. And he says your health is your wellness at the end. That boy, Lou Ferrigno, great guy, apparently. Well, not apparently. He seems like a great guy in the video. So I think this is a great classic example of somebody in this particular situation, Lou Ferrigno, looking at the world in the lens that maybe he looked at it in the 70s and the 80s, maybe looking at it at the same lens no matter what the situation is. Lou Ferrigno was a successful bodybuilder. He never got to the point where he won a Mr. Olympia contest. He never got to Arnold levels, but I think he won 2 Mr. Universe contests, which is not at that level of the Olympia, but it's nothing to turn your nose up at. Like, it's still a high-level bodybuilding competition. So Lou Ferrigno was a very successful bodybuilder and obviously played the Hulk for like 5 years or something like that. So he's got all this knowledge. He's got all this background. He's got this track record of, he says, 55 years of lifting, so he knows what he's talking about. But I think that for Lou Ferrigno, he has looked at the world, especially the fitness world, with the same lens that he has looked at it for the past 55 years, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing in this video that he says that is outwardly incorrect. Like, I think everything that he says here is a great tip, but it's not a tip that applies to everybody. He's looking at it with the lens of an old school bodybuilder. And I think if people fit into that mold and people want to go in that direction, they can and will have great success with the way that Lou Ferrigno sees fitness. And I don't know if Lou Ferrigno, he's got his Ferrigno Fit company, him and his daughter. I don't know. Their website's very vague. Their Facebook is very vague. So I don't know if they do training. They have like a YouTube channel. They do sell like merch, but I don't know if they have like supplements. I don't know exactly what Ferrigno Fit is. It's very vague, the website. But like if somebody were to, let's say, get trained by Lou Ferrigno, they can and probably will have great results because everything that he says there is inherently correct. But I think that what he misses out on is like using this lens doesn't apply to everybody. Not everybody's going to fit into the mold of an old school bodybuilder. If everybody were to kind of follow the way that Lou Ferrigno eats, they can and will make progress, but it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be achievable for everybody that's out there. It's going to be really hard for some people. People that don't eat fish are not going to be able to eat fish for dinner. And not that that's like not an easy substitution to make, but like if you're not used to eating protein with every meal, if you're not used to eating vegetables with every meal, if you're not used to eating vegetables at all, it's going to be really hard for you to make this jump that quickly. And I think that that's something that happens a lot. I think there's like a couple TikTokers that I can think of that say the most absolutely crazy shit on TikTok, where it's like, once again, it's in the same vein where it's not wrong, but it's not particularly right either. Like they're alienating a lot of people with their tips. And then you go into their comments and you're like, this dude's an idiot. And you go into their comments like, hey man, I know you get a lot of hate, but you helped me lose 35 pounds or whatever it is. Like you see these comments all the time. And it's like, it's kind of like this weird phenomenon that happens where, you can have somebody saying that what they're saying is maybe incorrect or misleading, but there's still people making progress with it. And it's just solely the fact that what they're saying is not incorrect. Same thing with Lou Ferrigno here. What he's saying is not incorrect, but he's using this lens and applying it to all people where it doesn't apply to all people. You might not be able to follow that Hulk diet that he talked about in this video. It might not be applicable for you the same way it might not be applicable for you to follow the things that those particular TikTokers say. It might be things that don't apply to you, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people that applies to. So I think on a situation basis, that's something to kind of think about. You have to be able to use these different lenses for different situations. Like if you're watching Game of Thrones with somebody who's never seen Game of Thrones before, you're going to talk to them differently about the show than you would if you're watching it with a friend who's seen every episode 3 times in a row. Like you're not going to go and watch the Game of Thrones, opener with a friend who's never seen it before, and you're not going to like say like, oh, like this is something that you should be looking out for. You're like, oh, this is Jaime Lannister and he bones his sister. This is somebody else. This is a Stark kid. You just got to know that these people are paired together. Like you're going to talk at one person very differently than the other. If you're watching the show with a friend who's seen the show before, you might get into deeper things. You might get into like, some theories behind, Jon Snow's lineage as a family. Same thing with Daenerys Targaryen. You're going to go into different sort of mental modes and use different lenses and have different conversations with those two different people because they're in different situations. And that's the same exact thing that happens and should happen in fitness, is that the same lens doesn't fit for everybody. So I don't think that there's anything here that Lou Ferrigno said that was inherently dangerous, because there are people that say just straight up wrong shit that is dangerous. He's not saying like, hey, grab a steroid needle and stick it in your right butt cheek and you'll get swole. He's not saying that. Like he's saying stuff that makes sense. But it might be something that you try and it doesn't work for you and you get discouraged and you say, you know what, I'm done trying to lose weight, or I'm done trying to get fit altogether. And it could be damaging in that way. But he's not saying anything inherently dangerous. So that's always something to think about. Just think about the lens that somebody is looking at something with and whether or not that lens applies to you. As a personal trainer, it's impossible to use a lens that applies to everybody. But if we can kind of blanket the most people that we possibly can, that's going to help a lot. So I think with Lou Ferrigno, and a lot of people on the internet do, is that they have this old school mentality. Like he's still looking at it with the old school bodybuilding mentality and lens, and that's okay. But just know that might not be for you. So if you try this video out, it might work, but it also might not work. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode of the Fitness Hippie Podcast. If you did, hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. If you have any questions, find me on Instagram at MTEFit. Send me a direct message there. That is the easiest way to get in contact with me. And as always, follow me on TikTok or wherever else I have social media. I think the only last one is Facebook. And as always, you can find me and all my stuff at mtefit.com. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, I will see you in the next one. Peace out.